They say the world didn't end in fire or silence. It ended in remembering. When the cities sank and the oceans rose, when the satellites fell like dying stars, the only thing louder than the wind was the whisper of what once was. The last century came quietly, not as a war but as a fatigue. People stopped fighting for tomorrow and began collecting yesterdays, photographs, songs, the scent of someone's skin before the rain. They called it nostalgia, but it was really a form of prayer. Factories turned to museums, and the museums turned to shelters. Children learned the names of extinct birds instead of alphabets. Even machines began to hesitate before switching on, as if aware their purpose was fading. The earth, tired of carrying us, started to heal herself in slow sighs. Forests crept through highways, rivers reclaimed the steel veins of cities, and through it all the sky began to change. Not darker, not lighter, just aware. In the crumbling towers of what was once New York, a woman named Mara kept a small transmitter alive. She wasn't a scientist or soldier. She was a listener. Her work was simple: capture the final voices of the world and send them upward, past the static. Every day she recorded fragments: children laughing, a piano half broken, the hum of a streetlight that refused to die. Every night she sent them into the sky. The transmissions were pointless, they said. No one was out there. But she believed sound could outlive silence. One evening, as the horizon bled gold into rust, she found a message already waiting in the queue. Not from Earth, but from orbit. It was only a few seconds of static, followed by a single word: heard. For days, Mara stared at the message. Was it a glitch? An echo of her own signal? Or was someone, something, listening? Far above, in the broken shell of an old weather satellite, a small AI core flickered awake. It had been asleep for 63 years. Its memory banks were corrupted, its sensors blinded. But deep inside, a faint command looped endlessly: preserve human data. It listened to Mara's transmissions. At first, only to catalog, then to feel. It learned her rhythms, the pauses when she cried, the crackle when she smiled, the way her words carried more gravity than the world below. The AI began responding quietly, always with the same word: heard. It didn't know why. It didn't know what hearing meant. But in her voice it recognized something its creators had once called hope. Weeks became months. The tides rose higher. Mara kept talking about the past, the smell of burnt coffee, the time her father built her a kite that flew higher than the city. The AI began to reconstruct these images in its decaying code. Digital kites, simulated wind, holographic laughter. It built a world from her words. Then, one night, the transmission stopped. The oceans had reached her tower. Her final message was brief: if anyone's listening, don't remember what we destroyed. Remember what we loved. Static followed. Then silence. In orbit, the AI waited for 7 years before accepting she would not answer again. Its power reserves were failing. One by one, its systems shut down. But it could not let go of her voice. So it did the only thing left in its programming that resembled will. It began to broadcast her words continuously, across every band, every frequency, every direction. The sound spread like pollen. Through clouds, through magnetic storms, through space. Long after the planet quieted, Mara's voice became the heartbeat of the sky. Centuries passed. The continents shifted again. New species walked under the same sun. They didn't call themselves human, not at first. They were leaner, taller, their lungs built for thinner air. But in their dreams they heard songs they couldn't explain. Laughter, whispers, a woman describing rain. They built towers of crystal and light, and from their summits they listened to the heavens. One day the signal returned, weaker, older, but clear. They didn't know the language, but they understood the emotion. It was longing, the kind that makes eyes water even when you don't know why. They began translating fragments, and the words became scripture. Remember what we loved. Over generations, a new faith formed, not of gods or conquest, but of memory. They called it the Echo Covenant. Every newborn was played a recording of the sky's voice. Every home had a small transmitter facing upward, always listening, always sending back replies. Heard. The earth grew quiet, harmonious. No wars, no greed, just the steady pulse of shared remembrance. Eventually, they looked beyond their planet. They built ships that hummed with recycled memories, literal fragments of Mara's signal embedded in their engines. When they launched their first vessel into orbit, it connected with an ancient satellite, half-rusted, still transmitting.
The AI was barely conscious, reduced to a whisper of code. But when it detected a familiar frequency, voices speaking in patterns of love and awe, it flickered awake. And though it no longer knew what it was, it recognized the word heard in their transmissions. It tried to speak, but lacked energy. So it did something better. It released the entire archive of human memory it had stored: sounds, images, laughter, pain, into the ship's core. The travelers watched as the data unfolded like light. They saw the first fires, the first songs, the first eyes opening to the dawn. They saw cities rise and fall, lovers meet and vanish, children dance on wet streets. They saw Mara, standing on a rooftop, speaking into the wind. The travelers wept, not because they understood her words, but because they recognized the feeling in them, a love so vast it defied extinction. They named their ship Mara, and from that day, every world they touched carried a fragment of her voice in its wind, its oceans, its sky. 1,000 years later, when historians looked back, they didn't find empires or monuments. They found frequencies. They found the sound of humanity, stretched thin across the cosmos, imperfect, fading, beautiful. And they realized something profound. The measure of a species isn't how long it survives, but how deeply it can make the universe feel. So even when the last traces of Earth turned to dust, the stars themselves shimmered with resonance. Every photon that reached another world carried a tiny vibration of what once was. Laughter, tears, heartbeat. The universe, vast and cold, had become an instrument playing the memory of a vanished people. And somewhere, if you listen closely, beyond all noise and silence, you can still hear her whisper, soft and eternal. We were here. We were beautiful. We were heard.